Hello, hello. Good morning. Good morning. I'm excited to be here today. And I'm going to be honest with you guys because I love you. Part of my excitement is because after church, my family and I are going to get to go on a little trip together. So it'll be fun to get away for a little half week. So that's part of my excitement. So if I'm get you guys out of here early, just know it's not you, it's me. And if I talk really fast, it's because I'm just rushing. No, I'm kidding. I'm excited because we've been playing hokey pokey with the book of Revelation all year. So if you've been with us for the year of 2022, we've been having little sections and chunks of messages that are just going through the entire book of Revelation. And so we are in the last few chapters of Revelation through the rest of the year. And so we're going to be wrapping up the series Last Days. And so it's been a super awesome revealing, hence the term revelation, but it's been really revealing about what God's plan is for humanity. And I love that we can see that through the book of Revelation. It's been wild for me. I've studied the Bible and read the Bible for over a decade, and it is so fun to just dive into something that's so unknown and so intense and so almost difficult and challenging, but then it's filled with so much hope and grace and just so much Jesus. It's been such a wild ride. But have you ever been wronged? Have you ever been wronged? I see some heads nodding. Have you ever wanted vengeance? Yeah. Have you ever taken matters into your own hand? Not any of us, never. Them out there, maybe. In here, no way. No way would we want to get even. No way. Have we been wronged and stood up to it? No way. But we all know what it's like to be wronged. And almost a lot of times we know what it's like to be wrong and it not be justifiable. Like it was just blatantly wrong. Like, why'd you do that? What did I do? I was just here. So I'm going to be in full disclosure. Your pastor, before he was a pastor, wasn't a pastor. Does that make sense? That I wasn't always a pastor. In fact, there's a chunk of my life that I call the BC days, before Christ. I lived this before Christ life. So I got your pastor has a past, right? And so it's okay. We allow no perfect people here. But in reading through Revelation 18, there's some stories or some fuzzy memories, we'll put it that way, that came to me. And so I wanted to share them with you because there's this time where I was just wronged. I was like, what? What did I do? That's not my fault. And so I had a friend, and we were underage. We were in college, but we were underage. And we were partying and consuming adult beverages, and we were in control of our own serving, so we overserved ourselves, as many college students tend to do and then regret. And my friend, she had far more than she should have to drink. And so, just being a decent human being, I'd take her car keys away from her. I'm like, nope, you can make bad choices, but you're not going to make those bad choices. And so I took her keys from her, and I hid them. And once I hid them, I thought, well, that's done. And then I would continue to make bad choices myself. And so later that evening, I hear from someone that she had found the car keys, and she decided that she was going to drive herself home anyways. And I was like, no. Long story short, she ended up getting pulled over by the authorities. She ended up getting charged with driving under the influence. But then, this is where I get wronged when I'm trying to be a good guy. She then tells the cops that I gave her the booze and gives her my name, my address, where to find me, what I'm doing. And I'm like, what did I do? I tried to stop you from this decision. And so I get a knock on my door at like 2 a.m. from the police. And then they're looking at me, and then what do? Well, then I just tell them, I bought it at that liquor store. They're the real bad guy, right? I just pass the buck along. If the bus is driving, I'm throwing you under it. But I was in that moment like, what? What did I do? I tried to stop you from this. And so I didn't feel like it was justified that I would be getting a knock on the door. Now, granted, I was breaking laws myself. Granted, I was making poor choices myself. But in that moment, I felt like it was just wrong. That I tried to be a good person and now I'm getting in trouble. Have you ever felt that before? Yeah? Yeah? Or have you ever been wrong and then tried to rationalize your bad choices with someone else's worst choices? Yes. Have you ever done that? See, again, I'm telling you, I'm gonna keep on that same before Christ thought process for a second. I was with a group of buddies, and we were coming home from a Giants game, and the Giants were playing the Dodgers, so it was a very enthusiastic game, and they had lost, so it was a very saddened game. And then on the train home, the train there is a bullet train. It just goes straight to the park, but the train home makes stops. And so after you're a knucklehead like I am, and you've had some liquid courage and some stupidity, I thought it'd be a fun game that every time the train stopped, I would get up out of my chair, run out of one cab, through the next cab, and then try to get back to my seat before the doors closed. I thought that would be a great game. Keep in mind, I was not in good shape. I was not fast at this time in my life. I'm not fast now, but I was really not fast back then. And so my friends that were in charge of kind of getting everyone home, they were not having a good time with me. They were like, you are out of control, you are slow, and you're trying to beat the train doors. What are you doing? And my response to that was I looked at my other friends who were passed out and said, well, at least I'm not as bad as them. See, I tried to justify my bad choices with someone else's bad choices, and it didn't work out that well. Have you ever done that too? Where you turn it into an us and them? No one in this room is familiar with that. Us and them? No way. No one in this room is familiar with saying, like, trying to paint yourself in this light where you're not the one making the problems. That it's always someone else's fault, someone else's reasoning. It's always someone else or something else. Justification. I grew up having my dad tell me that if you have to rationalize it, you're just telling yourself rational lies. Right? So that's a lot of times we catch ourselves, or I catch myself, even as a Christ follower, missing the mark, messing up, making bad choices, sinning, and then trying to rationalize it, when all Jesus wants us to do is repent from it. So what does this term last days mean? Where do we get this term last days? You know, it does sound a little bit ominous to me. It sounds a little, dare I say, spooky, that last days could mean like tomorrow. The last days, like we're in the end now. Well, yes, we are. It could end tomorrow. But it's also been going on for thousands of years. The term last days, we see from Hebrews chapter 1, verse 1 and 2. In the past, God spoke to our ancestors through the prophets at many times and in various ways. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son, whom appointed heir of all things, and through whom also he made the universe. See, this term last days is this span of time from Jesus till the end. From Jesus till the end. We're in that chunk. We're in that middle. We are in the last days. But I want you to hear, it's not in this woe is me, ominous, like fearful last days. It's in this excited anticipation of Jesus finishing what he started. It's an excitement thing. And for me, it's a missional drive that we are in these last days. I want heaven to be crowded. I want there to be a line around the pearly gates. And so it's activating to think of these last days. I have so many people in my life that I know, and I'm not sure if they're following Jesus, and I want to make sure that they have a relationship with their Creator. And so over this year, we've been unpacking that phrase, last days, and how it began, and it's going to end at some point, and we don't know when that is, and this book of Revelation kind of gives us pockets and windows and questions. It gives me a lot of questions on when that's going to happen and how it's going to happen. But I believe that God is honest and right and just, and so I trust him, and I believe that he's going to do what he said he's going to do. And through exploring it and seeing what the Apostle John has to say, we get this kind of summary or this purpose behind it from 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 11 and 13. Since everything will be destroyed in this way, what kind of people ought you be? You ought to live holy and godly lives as you look forward to the days of God and speed its coming. That day will bring about the destruction of the heavens by fire, and the elements will melt in the heat. But in keeping with his promise, we are looking forward to a new heaven, a new earth, where righteousness dwells. We get to look forward to that. But this is the purpose, is because at some point, this sinful, wayward world that we live in will be destroyed. And God will make it new. All things new again. So how should we live? How can we look at this book of Revelation and glean knowledge to apply to our lives on how we should live in these last days? That's what we're trying to learn here. That's what we're unpacking, is what can we apply? Now, I think it's fun to get into the weeds of what does this mean? What is that? Is it symbolic? Is it literal? Is it both? Is it this? That's great. But what can I apply to my life today? What can I transfer so that I can grow closer to God? Sometimes it's fun to have a discussion or a debate, but I want to know what's going to bring me closer to Jesus. What's going to help me live more like God? What's going to help me be who I've been created to be? That's when I look at things that are more important, and that's what we're trying to do, is unpack those and apply them. And what's funny is as we've been reading this, the book of Revelation was written to bring comfort to God's people who have been oppressed. It was written under the oppression of Rome. That's when John got the revelation, was when he was being oppressed by the Roman government for his belief in Jesus. So it's written to bring comfort to people, to the followers of God when they're oppressed. But it's also written to bring discomfort where God's people have benefited from the oppression of others. And how do we maintain the values that we just finished up our series on values, heart and soul? How do we maintain those values and the message of Jesus when everything around us is pointing in the opposite way? How do we maintain this course to follow God when everything else is pulling us the other way? How do we do that? Well, in chapter 18, we learn about this city, and it's an Old Testament city. It's the city of Babylon. And John talks about the fall of Babylon. That's what 18 is all about. It's all about the fall of Babylon. Well, historically, at that point, Babylon had already seen its end. Babylon had already fallen. There was no more Babylon. But I don't want us to just think about Babylon as a location or as a city, but let's also think of it as a representation or as a symbol. What could this Babylon be? Now there's a lot that goes on with it, and we'll get into it. And my thumb is somehow highlighting stuff. Sorry about that. That totally derailed my thought for a second. I'm going to be honest. I was like, whoa, magic thumb. But the promise of this chapter is that Jesus is the King coming back. And he has a plan to rid the world of what this Babylon represents. He has this plan to rid the world of Babylon. And what might surprise you, as it surprised me, is just how much Babylon still lives inside of me. Just how many bricks of Babylon are built up inside my heart. That surprised me. See, James 3:16 says this, "For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and every evil practice." Where you have envy and selfish ambition, you will find disorder and every evil practice. Kind of sounds to me like self-centeredness, selfish means and grabs and greed is this driving force for sin. Seems like that's one of the footholds for evil is the me monster. That the enemy might actually be the inner me. So let's look at, now bear with me, I'm going to read all of 18, so bear with me. Let's look at it. Go open up chapter 18, Revelation. After this, I saw another angel coming down from heaven. He had great authority, and the earth was illuminated by his splendor. With a mighty voice, he shouted, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling for demons and a haunt for every impure spirit, a haunt for every unclean bird, a haunt for every unclean, detestable animal. For all the nations have drunk the maddening wine of her adulteries. The kings of the earth committed adultery with her, and the merchants of the earth grew rich from her excessive luxuries." It took me about that far in my reading to start to see the Babylon in me. It took about that much in reading this and the fall of Babylon for me to go, oh no, that sounds like some stuff that I actually desire. I mean, excessive luxuries? I'm going to be honest with you. I desire excessive luxuries. I know I shouldn't, but I'm like, I was just looking on Finish Line for some extra pairs of Jordans yesterday. That's excessive luxuries. I started to make my coffee with purified water. Not just tap water. Oh, no. I can't contaminate my coffee with purified water, with excessive luxuries. Now, I'm not going to come at our culture because a lot of times I was born into a gift and a grace that has running water, that has clean drinking water, that has shelter, that has good food. So I'm not going to come at us for where and how and when we were born. I did nothing for that. But I am going to come at my excessive desire for those things, to where I might do some wrong things. I might sin a little to keep some of my excessive luxuries. See, in this, John is coming at the culture of greed and violence, selfish ambition, this desire, this arrogance, this deservant mentality. Having wealth and having great things is not a problem. But when you think you deserve it, well, now we're starting to get away from the what and get to the why. I look at money as something that just exposes who you are. If you're a generous person and you have a lot of money, guess what you're going to be? More generous. If you're not a generous person, guess what you're going to be? Really wealthy and stingy. Like it accentuates and illuminates who you are. It doesn't change who you are. It just reveals it more. But in this, John's also making kind of a subversive slight at Rome, this Babylon, because remember, it's a little bit of a both and. So it's, yes, it was a city that rebelled against God, and yes, it is a culture, yes, it is an inner Babylon, and he was living in Rome that was doing, I mean, history repeats itself. It was doing what Babylon did. And so in this letter, he was kind of calling out Rome. He was calling out his culture of the time. And if you get into the history books and you look at the principles of Rome, the principles of Babylon, the principles of other very conquering areas and establishments and empires, you're going to see a lot of the same stuff. Selfish ambition and every kind of evil. Humans are broken. Humans are flawed. Humans are trying to recreate God's garden. Babylon is a counterfeit attempt to recreate what we lost in the Garden of Eden. Every culture, every era, every person has this thought of a utopia, has this thought of peace and harmony and perfection. We all understand and crave the garden. And so we try to build it. We try to do it. We try to create it. And guess what happens? Sin removed us from the garden. We have sin in our life. And so no matter what we do, it's never going to be the garden. God's the only one that can give us the garden. We create a counterfeit. Genesis 11:4 says, "Then they said, 'Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the whole face of the earth.'" That's from the Tower of Babel. They wanted to build something that reached the heaven. They wanted to be God. They wanted to control the garden. How many times do I want to control God in my life? How often do I consider him to be the genie from Aladdin, where if I say the right things or do the right things, I get my 3 wishes? How often do we just look at God from a human perspective instead of saying, wait a minute, I got me into this mess. I'm not going to be able to get myself out. God, help. Help. Not, God, if I was you, I'd do it differently. If I was you, I'd want to make a name for myself. And whether it's the Tower of Babel or Babylon or the Roman Empire, Pharaoh's Egypt, whatever it may be, it's humans trying to build a system to control the power and to replace God. You can't legislate morality. Morals are like water. They find the lowest common denominator, oftentimes sadly. We can't build a system good enough to replace God. We can't. Now, we do need rules and order. I'm all for that. I have 2 kids. Of course we have rules. And of course I break them all the time. Of course, I'm dad. I can have ice cream before dinner. You can't. But God doesn't break his rules. I'm not a perfect father. God is. God's your perfect father. And mine. So as we continue reading, "Then I heard another voice from heaven say, 'Come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins, so that you will not receive any of her plagues. For her sins are piled up to the heaven, and God has remembered her crimes. Give back to her as she has given. Pay her back double for what she has done. Pour her a double portion of her own cup. Give her as much torment and grief as the glory and luxury she has gave herself. In her heart she boasts, I sit enthroned as queen. I am not a widow. I will never mourn. Therefore, in one day her plagues will overtake her, death, mourning, and famine. She will be consumed by fire, for mighty is the Lord God who judges her. When the kings of the earth who committed adultery with her and shared her luxury see the smoke of her burning, they will weep and mourn over her. Terrified at her torment, they will stand far off and cry." We get an invitation to leave that lifestyle. We get an invitation to remove ourselves because there is judgment that comes. For God to be righteous, he has to be just. And his invitation is for you to remove yourself from that sinful life, from that sinful DNA, remove yourself from that order, and surrender to him. Come out of her, my people. Don't share in her sins. You don't have to justify your bad choices by someone else's worst choices. You just have to ask for forgiveness and acknowledge that your choice was bad. You see, when Jesus died on the cross and rose from the grave, he came to remove the penalty of sin, which is death. The wages of sin is death. So Jesus removed the penalty of sin. That's salvation. That's what we call salvation. And that's what this is saying. That salvation is the invitation out of a life of sin. Jesus has the power and authority to remove the penalty of sin as long as we have the humility to surrender to him. And coming up are 3 sections of woes, and they get a little bit more intense, and they get a little bit more personal as we read on. So bear with me, and if your toes are out, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to step on them. They might get stepped on. Woe, woe to you, great city, you mighty city of Babylon. In 1 hour your doom has come. The merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her because no one buys their cargoes anymore. Cargoes of gold, silver, precious stones, and pearls, fine linen, purple, silk, scarlet cloth, every sort of citron wood, and articles of every kind made of ivory, costly wood, bronze, iron, marble, cargoes of cinnamon and spices and incense, myrrh and frankincense, of wine and olive oil, of fine flour and wheat, cattle and sheep, horses and carriages, the human beings sold as slaves. They will say, the fruit you long for is gone from you. All your luxury and splendor has vanished, never to be recovered. The merchants who sold these things and gained their wealth from her will stand far off, terrified at her torment. They will weep and mourn and cry out. What catches me from that passage is that a lot of the things read, you see silk, you see purple cloth, you see frankincense, myrrh, fine linens, gold, silver, pearls. A lot of those are used to describe splendor, majesty, like Jesus. A lot of those are used to explain and depict heaven. A lot of this is trying to recreate or take advantage, hijack the imagery and the splendor and the majesty of God and his kingdom. And these merchants, they benefited from that. How many times have I benefited from someone else being willing to sin? How many times have I benefited from the lie of omission where I just didn't say anything? I'm not going to get in the middle of that. That's not my problem. How many times have I benefited from that? How many times have you benefited from others? Woe, woe to you, great city, dressed in fine linen, purple and scarlet, and glittering with gold, precious stones and pearls. In 1 hour, such great wealth has been brought to ruin. Every sea captain and all who travel by ship, the sailors and all who earn their living from the sea, will stand far off. When they see the smoke of her burning, they will exclaim, was there ever a city like this great city? They will throw dust on their heads and with weeping and mourning cry out. Have you ever gotten a knockoff before? Like gone out of the States and came back with, I remember I went to, I was a early young teen. My family went on a cruise to Mexico, and I got everything. Brand new Oakleys, brand new this, brand new that, and it was all not expensive. And I was like, this is awesome. Come to find out, it's not real. And I was like, what? These are not real Oakleys. They weren't real Oakleys. And at 13, it doesn't really matter. Or I have some very nice watches that are not real. And so they don't keep time as well as the really nice watch. Now, they were hand-me-down gifts, and so I didn't pay for them. I'm not too worried about it. But there's a reason. There's a reason. There's a quality to authenticity. And it can be close, but it's not quite when it's a knockoff. It can be close. Might even be able to get the job done. But when you know authentic, when you know genuine, a knockoff just doesn't hold any weight. It's not worth anything when you know the real stuff. Counterfeit money is just paper. When you make counterfeits, they can look good. When you make counterfeits, they can feel close, but be wildly off and of no value. And our systems and our structures trying to recreate the garden might get close at times, They might be good intentioned, but they aren't God intentioned. When we get with Jesus and he transforms us from the inside out is when we can then go and be lights to transform communities. Woe, woe to you, great city, where all who had ships on the sea became rich through her wealth. In 1 hour she has been brought to ruin. Rejoice over her, you heavens. Rejoice, you people of God. Rejoice, apostles and prophets, for God has judged her with the judgments she imposed on you. Have you ever noticed that people who get into power usually cast more judgment than they take? I was reading a book. It's by a gentleman named Wayne Cordero, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but we're really good at judging people by their actions and judging ourselves by our intentions. How often is the person making the judgment the one going like, yeah, but I know what I meant by that? Or I'm just going to go based off of what you do, and I'm going to go based off of what I thought or expected or intended. We're really good at judging your actions and my intentions. And that's why I love Jesus. He open arms, knows all your dirty laundry, still loves you. And he has all the authority to judge you, and instead paid for you. You see, with salvation comes sanctification. That is Jesus working inside of us to remove the power of sin. So dying on the cross removed the penalty of sin. And then now the process of growing and becoming more like God, going back to being made in the image of God, where he starts to excavate the humanity in me, I start to lose the power of sin in my life. I start to want to do the right thing because that's just who I'm becoming, not because I'm afraid of getting in trouble. You see, the power of sin, that's what we call the process of sanctification. Then a mighty angel picked up a boulder the size of a large millstone and threw it into the sea and said, with such violence the great city of Babylon will be thrown down, never to be found again. The music of harpists and musicians, pipers and trumpeters will never be heard in you again. No worker of any trade will ever be found in you again. The sound of a millstone will never be heard in you again. The light of a lamp will never shine in you again. The voice of a bridegroom and bride will never be heard in you again. The merchants were the world's important people. By your magic spell, all the nations were led astray. In her was found the blood of prophets and God's holy people, and all who have been slaughtered on the earth. Revelation 18, 1 through 24. A couple things that it says that you'll be lost in an hour. You ever been in a place where you had, I don't know, maybe some money in the stock market, and in an hour, you didn't have that money anymore? You ever been to Vegas, and you had some money in your pocket, and then you go to a casino in Vegas, and now you don't have money in your pocket anymore? Anyone ever been there? They have lights on for a reason. Those electricity bills are steep. And what really jumps out at me, too, is the light of a lamp will never shine in you again. We're called to be the light of the world. So if the light will never shine in that city again, seems like it has only evil. It seems like God is destroying evil. Seems like this construct and this structure that humanity has tried to build, God's going to remove that because he's going to do something better. He's going to replace it. See, we broke it, and now he's going to fix it. It's kind of cheesy. I think it's a bumper sticker, but I love it where religion says, I messed up, don't tell dad. A walk with Jesus says, I messed up, go get dad. This is where it gets fixed. We broke the system. We tried to fix it ourselves, made it worse. You ever done that? Ever try to fix something to make it worse? I've done some home projects with no home project skills. YouTube is the only teacher I got. And I have made some problems myself, trying to fix things. We've done that, each and every one of us. We sinned. We sin. We're going to sin. We're going to try to fix it instead of just run to Jesus. There's this third component where Jesus is coming again to remove the presence of sin. That's called glorification. Salvation, sanctification, and glorification. Remove the penalty, remove the power, and then now remove the presence. See, the Garden of Eden, the original, the genuine, the authentic version of God's world was with no presence of sin. We're going to go back to the garden. We're going to get there again. Jesus is coming to make all things new. That's good news. That's the gospel. He's coming to make all things new. Reread James 3:16. For where we have envy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and every evil practice. But God began a good work in you, and he will carry it on to completion. God's not done with you, and God's not done with humanity. That's good news. We don't have to end the game losing. God is going to complete what he started. God will complete what he started. In you, through you, and in this world. So how can we learn to recognize the signs of Babylon in our own hearts? How can we learn to recognize where we are still rebelling from God? Bow your heads. Jesus, thank you so much for your love, that you are going to make all things new, that you are going to fix what's broken in me. Lord, that it's not just a sad, woe is me, God's going to come and fix it, but it's a journey that you invite us on. It's a process that you include us in. Lord, that you can do all things, and you chose that your redemption plan for humanity to be through your people, Lord. That's a gift. We thank you for that. And I want to give a moment right now, if there's anyone in this room who has not said yes to salvation, and they want to invite Jesus in to remove the penalty of sin from their life and go on the journey of removing the power to one day having the presence removed. I'd like to give you that moment. If that's you, just raise your hand or look up at me. We'll make eye contact, and I'd love to pray with you in this moment. Thank you, Jesus. Yes. Amen. Jesus, you're the King, you're the Creator, you're the coming King. We believe in your name and your power, and we believe that it is us who are sent to love, that we will be known by the way we love, not by the way we judge. In Jesus' name, amen.